Hello and welcome to Revit for BIM Training Seminars, Session 3. Continuing on with curse and panel systems, we're going to look at adaptive panels. Okay, so this is jumping straight into something that's quite fun and interesting for designers to play around with. It's a good thing to understand. We're going to start off in the conceptual mass area, and we're just going to create ourselves a mass on the floor. Curving mass is probably a nice way to show this. So just going to create a quick spline, escape out of that, select it, extrude it up. Now if you haven't done the earlier videos about using and creating conceptual masses, then you might want to go and find those. I'm just going to edit the profile of this to make it a little bit wilder, you can call it that. Okay, so I've just got a sheet. I'm going to select the sheet, divide it. Just going to make slightly more vertical grids than horizontal grids, say 15, just so they're almost square. And I'm going to select the grid surface representation. I'm going to turn on nodes. That's going to help us later on for snapping to the grid. Okay, so it doesn't matter what shape you create, but just create yourself a shape roughly like that. The next bit is the important part of this demonstration, and that is using adaptive components and adaptive nodes to create a panel that we can use to put into this grid system. Okay, so to do that, hover over new family, and come down here to generic model adaptive. Open up. What we're going to use is point elements, and we're going to turn them into adaptive elements. Now the order in which you put point elements in is very important, so if you follow along with me for now, you'll get the idea. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I've got 9 nodes. I'm going to select across those nodes. Make sure you don't select any of the work planes. When you've selected nodes, you get this option to make them adaptive. Now you'll see that the numbering system represents the order you put them in, and that's important for later on because you need to remember the order you numbered these things. Okay. We're going to do a couple of things. We're going to start off with a sheet, just a basic panel that we're going to use, and then we're going to build on it. So, to start with, let's, using my hold control, I'm going to select those 3 nodes, and then I'm going to spline through points. I'll do the same again through these, holding my control, spline through points, and again through these, holding my control, spline through points. Now these adaptive points are very, very useful. They're very flexible objects, and we're going to create a form and loft through these 3 lines. It seems to work best if, and you can see the spline is following my node, it's attached to that node. If I just pull these out from being flat, so I'm just selecting them and grabbing my blue line to move in the Z plane. So just don't go too crazy with that, just pull them away a little bit. Now all I'm going to do here is select the lines themselves using my control again. When I've selected all 3, I get the option to create a form, and that throws a sheet across all of those nodes. Now you can see if I select that node, the sheet goes with it. So I've got a flexible sheet. Okay, let's load that into the project. I should really save it for now, actually, before I do that. Save as, family. I'm just going to stick mine on my desktop. Call it Flex Sheet. Okay, now load it into the project. Now you see you've got hold of it, and it's wanting to be inputted onto this face of nodes in the number and order that you created the nodes on this adaptive sheet. So I'm going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then hit escape. Okay. Now this is very good, because previously, when creating panels not using the adaptive components, you'd get quite a lot of tessellation between panels. This is a great way of getting smooth, seamless panels. To replicate this across the sheet, you can imagine repeating that process over and over again is going to take quite a long time. So a very simple thing to do is select the component itself, go up to this button which is now repeat. It was array, and this knows it's hosted on a sheet or mass, and it will take it across. I can now make changes to this. And have it update. That's just got rid of that gap, which is to 14. What I can also do here is carefully select the original profile that created the wall, go to edit profile, and I can make some changes if I want. Drag these around and then hit tick to update. It takes a bit of computing power to rethink. Okay, so I've got a nice smooth non-tessellated surface. Now the next thing we're going to try and do is give this panel system some depth. So I'm going to go back to my Flex sheet. I'm actually going to get rid of all of those, hit delete, and I'm going to start again. So same again, I'm going to set my ground plane, and I'm going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I've got 9 nodes again, make them adaptive. Now this next thing we're going to do is we're going to give the panel some depth, and to do that we need to host a point element onto one of these existing point elements. Now this is a little bit tricky when you first do it, so follow my lead. I'm going to use set. I'm going to find that horizontal work plane, select it. I'm going to turn show on, so we'll see that that is actually our work plane. Now that allows me to stick a point element and snap it to the middle there. I'm going to hit escape twice, reselect my new node and pull it upwards. Okay, so what have I done there? If I grab this point now, you see the two of them are associated with one another, which is going to be very useful. So I've got a non-adaptive node associated with an adaptive node. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that for all 9. This takes a little bit of time, so I'm going to jump the video to the next bit. Okay, so that's all my points associated with the adaptive points. You see I've associated them all and pulled them all up to give them a Z value. Now that Z value is what we're going to control next. We'll do it on 1 and then repeat. So I'm going to select the node. And if you notice in the properties, it's saying dimension, offset, and it's got a figure. Now we can parameterize that by clicking on this button here, add a parameter, call it thickness, leave it as a type. OK. So that's now being controlled by a parameter. If I use my control to select all of the other nodes and then offset is blank because they're all different heights, but I can click in here and associate that thickness parameter with them. So that now means we'll give it a quick flex, go up to family types, give it a quick flex, change that to say 5000 just to get a nice visible, and apply that. OK. Take that down to 2000 again. OK, so that's working for us. The next thing is to make a form out of these nodes. I'll start over here. Now there's a couple of ways of doing this. I actually quite like just keeping my control held, select a straight line, hit my spline through points, select and select, keeping my control, spline through points. Got a warning about plane determining, but that doesn't matter. Use my control, select the points, hold my control to select the points. OK. I'm going to change that line to a reference line. Just gives us a bit more control for later and allows us to use it to host other things such as Mullions, etc. OK. So we can repeat that across the other ones. There is another way of doing that line input. If I go spline through points, I can just click and escape, click, click and escape, click, click, click and escape, click, click and escape twice. That gives us the same result. Turn that into a reference line. Do the same again. Click, click, escape. Click, escape. 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 So that's probably a quicker way of doing it. Escape twice. Select it. Turn it into a reference line. Okay. So same again. Holding my control. Create a form using those three lines. Now the thickness of that form, quick test, go in here, should be controlled by that parameter. Yes, it is. Okay. Right, we need to save this as a different file. Family, flex sheet thick. Save, load into the project. Okay, you've got hold of it at the moment by the first node, but we don't have to actually apply it ourselves again, so escape out of that. What we can do is select our curtain panel system. It's referring to flex sheet, so the original panel, and just change that to flex sheet thick. Take a little bit of processing to work that out for us, and that gives us a nice chunky seamless form. I can change that parameter in here, take it down a little bit, apply, just going to do a bit of thinking there. Okay, that. Let's make it much more contorted. So I'm going to jump back into this. I'm going to turn on my wireframe view so I can see my nodes quite easily. I'm going to select that middle node, and instead of the offset being driven by that original parameter, I'm going to make a new parameter and call it midpoint. And OK that. I'm just going to leave it as a type for now, but it could be an instance if you wanted this to apply to different things. Now what that allows us to do is that midpoint, let's make that quite thin. So let's say 300 mil, apply, and we'll get a puckered in version of our panel. Now I'm going to save that as something else. Thick midpoint. Okay. Load it into the project. Escape because we don't need to do that work. Select our curtain wall. Change that. This is going to take a relative amount of processing. But you see we're going to starting to get some very nice forms. Of course we can alter that around. It's parameterized. The beauty of parameters is we can swap things around. So let's make that midpoint 4000 and make the thickness 300. Flip it over. It's going to take a bit of processing. OK that. And that gives us a different form. OK, so let's continue this process and create a panel that's got a mullion. To keep it clear and simple, we'll just use the original flexible sheet. So go back, find that. So here's our original flexible sheet. First thing we're going to do, let's add a parameter to this sheet within the material section. Material of the sheet. OK that. Turn that into glass. We'll add a contrasting material to the mullion so we can see the difference. Now, adding a mullion to this isn't very straightforward. What we don't want is a mullion all the way around the form, because it repeats. You're going to end up with mullions on top of one another. So we're just going to create one along this top edge here and across that arc there. The issue here is I can select that line, and if I was going to throw a profile along that line, that's fine. However, there isn't a line along here, so we're going to have to draw that in. I'm going to use my spline through points, snap. I'm going to get a warning. I can OK that, get the same warning again, OK that. Let's escape out. OK, so I've now got the tab through. I've now got a line along there and a line along there. Next is to add a profile. This can be a little bit tricky. I'm going to add the profile to node number 2, and hovering over the node and using my tab, I'm going to tab through those associated work planes until I get the one that's running tangential to this line, and click on it. That's now set. I can now draw a profile that will add to that node. I'm just going to draw a simple circle for now. I'm going to parameterize that dimension, making it a permanent dimension, selecting it, add a parameter, mullion radius. OK that. Right, I'm now ready to tab through to select that individual line, hold my control, grab that line, zoom in and grab my profile and create a form. Relatively hard to see with this shading on, but you see I've now got a mullion running around those two sides. Let's pull one of these nodes up just to check that that's working for us and still associated with the adaptive nodes. It is. Pull that back down. Okay, lastly in here, tab through until I get that new form. Add a parameter to it and for the material, mullion material. Okay. Now I want to save this as something else. Save as flex sheet mullion and load it into the family. Sorry, load it into the project, I should have said then. Okay, you can see I've got hold of it. Escape out, select, and find that flex sheets mullion. Processing. What you see, I now have mullions around my flexible sheets. It works quite well. To fill in these gaps in the mullions here, you have to make an adaptive component that's just the mullion, which involves drawing a line through 3 adaptive nodes and adding that profile along it to replicate what you've done previously in the panel you just built, which is quite easy. Let's add some materials to finish off here. So select, edit that. We've now got these mullion materials and sheet materials. Let's add some materials to here. Mullion material. Let's add zinc. Sheet material. Well, let's add glass. Okay, turn it to realistic. And we're starting to see how using adaptive components can be very useful for design. Okay, thank you very much.